Hey guys, Justin here for S&S Archery, and in today's gear video we're going to show you how to set up your second and third axis adjustment on an HHA sight. Now in this video today we are setting up the axis adjustments on a Tetra Tournament Edition Rise, but as far as the process, the steps, it's all going to be pretty much the same on all your newer HHA models. Alright guys, getting into this video, one of the most important things that you can do after you've mounted your sight up to your bow is just make sure everything is level. And that has to do with all of our axis adjustments. If you're a guy that likes to really stretch it out, shoot long distances, you like to shoot steep uphill, downhill in hunting situations, that's where these axis adjustments come in. If you're a guy that shoots 20 and 30 yards and that's about it, it's not going to be as crucial. We still suggest you set it up just so you have the confidence in your setup that everything is perfect. So we'll get started. As far as the items that you're going to need, obviously the sight, you're going to need some Allen wrenches and then some kind of levels. As far as the leveling system that I use, just a cheap Amazon level. It gets me really close. You can buy this, like I said, off of Amazon, like 10 bucks. That's all it is. There are some other cool tools that I've used before, the Hamskea Gen 2 Pro. This is fantastic, especially if your sight has a bunch of different axis adjustments, including the first. This comes in handy. You can also mount this up to your riser. So instead of leveling the string, you can find a flat spot on your bow to actually mount this up. Here on my Hoyt, everything is rounded. It's a carbon bow, so it doesn't work as well. So I'm just going to stick with the string level. One of the other items that you're going to want in order to set up your second and third axis adjustment is something that holds your bow in a vertical position. Here I'm using a bow vise. Now if you don't have something like this, you can always use a straight line on a wall, use a corner of a wall where two walls meet. You can use a door jamb. Obviously this is going to take some work with another person to hold your bow perfectly in line on that, on the line itself. But if you have a vise, it definitely makes the process a lot nicer. Everything is eye level and I'm able to make those adjustments pretty easy. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is just level up our bow. Like I said, you could use a tool like this, the Gen 2 Pro from Hamskea on your riser, but because my riser configuration, everything is curved, I'm just going to use a simple string level and level up my string. All right, so now that our bow is all leveled up from side to side, front and back, we can go ahead and start making our axis adjustments. So our second axis adjustment is basically the tilt. Now with our bow level, we can go ahead and look up here, and on the scope housing, the bubble is on the far left side, which is telling me that I need to tip the scope housing down. So I need to come up to the front and make adjustments on the front side of the rail. To make an adjustment for your second axis on the HHA sights, you're going to see 4 sets of Allen screws, 2 on the bottom and 2 on the top. Now if your sight configuration looks a little bit different from this, it's probably because you don't have this new infinite adjust plate. If you have an older model of an HHA, this new plate has been around for about 1.5 years now. Really it's intended to give us more windage left and right. Mainly for guys that are running an inline sight system. So whether they're using the Matthews bridge lock or some kind of Hoyt mount, that's what that mainly is intended for. This piece here is where we're going to get our elevation on our sight in process. It's going to set the scope housing, but the actual mounting adjustment and for the second axis has to do with the 2 out front that are holding the scope rod. So yours might be just right on the rail if you don't have the infinite adjust plate. But here, where I do have it, I need to make the adjustments on the front screws. So I'm going to go ahead and break this loose here on the bottom. Crack it loose. Loose on top. And you can see here now I have the ability to pitch the scope housing. So the next thing I'm going to do is just make sure the bow string's leveled up. And I'm just going to look down, hold the scope housing to where the bubble is perfectly in the center. And I'm going to tighten down the bottom screw first until I get it just absolutely perfect. Just snug it up just ever so slightly. And then I'm going to move to the top and tighten down the top Allen screw. Now that we have that done, we can move on to the third axis adjustment. Now this might take you a few more attempts to get set up. Now there's a couple different methods out there. You may have redone this research already just to see how people are doing it. One of the methods being you can actually just tip your bow down at like a 45-degree angle. But for us, what we recommend you do is set this up at full draw. So everybody holds their bow a little bit different. Our torque and our limbs and everything changes as we're at full draw versus a resting state. So it makes the most sense to have everything leveled up as you're at full draw when you're going to make the shot. So what we're going to do now is I'll grab a release and an arrow and we'll move on to step 2. If our second axis adjustment is perfectly set up just through the steps that we just did, anytime I'm horizontal and I'm shooting on a perfectly flat plane, my arrow is not going to drift left or right. As long as I have everything sighted in, I'm going to shoot just fine. Third axis adjustment really comes in for the steep uphill and downhill shots. And that has to do with just putting a little bit of pitch in the scope. So as we're at full draw, when we come down to a 45-degree angle, if our scope isn't pitched perfectly, the bubble level is going to move either left or right. So we want to make sure that even centered up and then even at a 45, that bubble stays in the center. So I'll walk over here to the wall and I'll demonstrate how we're going to find out this. So in order to check your third axis adjustment, you need to find a straight line. Here I'm going to use this door jamb. I've already checked it. It is 100% level. So I know that I can basically come to full draw, come all the way down with my pins, put my pins vertically on that black line, and then look up at my bubble and see if I need to make an adjustment. If it's not perfectly in the center, I know I need to make that adjustment on the sight. So go ahead and I'll check it out. So full draw, come down to about a 45 and use your pins to create a line right on the wall, that black line, and then look at the bubble level. And it's tipped to the right, so I know I need to make an adjustment. We'll go back, we'll make the adjustment, we'll come do it again. So this process might take you a handful of tries. We just want to make sure we get it right. Okay, so to make an adjustment on your third axis for your HHA sights, we have 2 sets of screws that we're going to basically be working with. Now, it does not matter if you have the dovetail, if you have the standard base, or even their Hoyt mount. These all are going to be the same. They're in the same location, so just follow along. Here on the top, we have this main grub screw we're just going to loosen up. Just break that loose. And then here on the inside, you're going to see a little Allen screw, and we're just going to begin to tighten it up. Now, if I turn it clockwise, the sight pitches in, comes towards me. If I go counterclockwise, it pitches out. So I'm going to go ahead and I just put a little bit in clockwise. I'm going to go back, tighten up that grub screw, and then I'm going to go back to my wall, do the entire process the same, and see what direction that bubble goes. Hopefully it's perfect, but I might have to make another adjustment. .45, pins perfectly in line, and this is really close. So just that slightest movement got me a lot closer. So I would go back and I would fine tune it even more just to make sure that everything was perfect. But for video purposes, this is pretty dang close. So we'll head back over to the table and conclude the video. Just remember that, other than the infinite adjust plate, the different dovetails, the process is pretty much going to be the same for all these different models. Your Tetras, your Tetra Max, the Rise, they're gonna basically be the same setup. So hopefully that helped you guys out. Like I said, one of the most important things you can do before you start that sight-in process. But if you guys have any more questions about the HHA sights, any videos that we've done in the past, please feel free to give us a call, shoot us an email. We'd be glad to help. And thanks for watching.